Hello and welcome back to the third and final part of Moonlight Performance. Finally it's time for the watercolour. So we will be painting it in my normal watercolours, which are my Schminker Horodam watercolours. I will be going over things. I will start with a fox, and in my usual super slow way I will be building it up with glazes. I think this first one is I think transparent sienna, but I will build it up and I will add more depth to that orangey redness of the fox. I love this colour that I'm using on the cape here. It's quinacridone purple, and it's such a beautiful colour. I mean, I'm laying it down here on top of sepia ring, so you don't get to see the full beautiful colour of it, but it's fabulous. I really recommend any of the quinacridone colours. I think are fabulous, but this one has almost like a sparkle to it when you. If you do a swatch of it, it has some depth to it, almost a goldness to it. Yes, it's a wonderful colour. You can see that I'm building. I did the collar there for the fox, as I said in the last video, or in the first video, I think it was, about him being quite exotic. I decided it wasn't a plan to begin with, but I thought, well, how can I make him seem like he's more well-travelled than most foxes, and that's when I thought, oh, I'll do like a leopard print on a fur collar. So you know, you've got to imagine that he's very well-travelled. He's been to sub-Saharan Africa, and he's picked up the pelt of a leopard, which is a bit unpleasant for a fox to do, really. But yeah. So just one of the little things I thought of when I was painting this. One of the things I always used to do was, when I was painting trees, is I tend to paint them brown because that's what you think they are. But of course, you know, not all trees are like that. I mean, some are more brown than others. But yeah, I always tend to go for a more green colour, because they tend to have that. A lot of trees tend to be more greeny grey. So that's the colour I kind of mix up. I mix generally a little bit of green, I think it's green gold, yeah, green gold, and like a neutral grey with it, and that's the colour I kind of come up with when it comes to the actual trunk of a tree. It can give you that impression that it's an old tree, and it has, you know, can have moss on it, or it can be like an ash tree or anything like that. They tend to have that greeniness to them. The sort of bushy part of a tree at the top is I wanted to differentiate it, so I made it a kind of colder green than the actual trunk of it. For the sky, I started initially with some cerulean blue, because I just love cerulean blue, and I love the vibrancy of it, but I know already, but I want to go over it with some indigo as well. I think indigo is a fabulous colour for night skies, because it has that the darkness, but it's not black, and it has a beautiful depth to it. Curtains, I think I started with a basic wash of a mixture of permanent carmine and potter's pink. Potter's pink is a wonderful colour. I mean, it's like a dusky grey pink. It's the only problem with it for when using on smooth hot press paper is it's a very granulating colour. So when it dries, it tends to leave those visible gritty pieces of pigment, which works brilliantly on a cold press textured paper, but on a hot press paper it can look a bit messy. But I tend not to worry about that too much when I'm doing these kind of more vintagey style. I'm not so precious about flat, smooth washes. I mean, as you can see with the way I slapdash the ink on, like on the curtains there, you can see I let it kind of bloom out, and cauliflower, which I think is the phrase, when you put too much pigment with too much water, it can separate like that. But I do like that kind of roughness, that texture that it leaves behind for these kind of old-fashioned vintagey style pictures. I also have a thing about mushrooms and toadstools. I do like to put them in a lot of pictures. I just think they're a fascinating thing. These most, you can see the classic red and white spotted Super Mario style mushrooms, the iconic mushroom. But I just love to add them into these kind of scenes. Anything set in a woodland. I did a painting of Mirkwood Forest. From Tolkien's Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, I really enjoyed doing all the little mushrooms and toadstools everywhere. So I tend to take something from every picture that I do. There'll be something new that I try, and if I like it, it tends to crop up in my next picture, and then the next picture, particularly if it's needed. I wouldn't do mushrooms on a seaside scene, but anything where it's a forest, I will now almost always put mushrooms in them. If it's set in the sea, I tend to put seagulls in the sky as well. It's just one of those things. You build up a little back catalogue of details and things to throw into certain scenes. If you've done something similar in the past, you'll tend to repeat it. A friend recently asked me why I paint with watercolour pans rather than watercolour tubes, and I had to think about it for a little while, because I have used watercolour tubes before, but because I tend to paint in such light washes and glazes over and over and let it dry it and wash over it again, I just like the ease of the pan. I find it less wasteful for me, rather than squirting out too much paint out of a tube and then letting it dry. Although it can be reused, obviously, if you use tubes. But I much prefer pans. I just find them a real pleasure to use. I mean, before I bought these Schminker paints, I used to use the Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolours, which are a great sort of student paint, but they're very chalky, and it takes a lot to activate them, a lot of moisture. You can be scrubbing away on it trying to get that pan wet enough and to actually paint with. But with these high quality professional paints, you just have to touch them with water and they activate, and you get loads and loads of pigment straight away. So although it's good to start with student grade watercolors, I think as soon as you can afford to do it, then definitely buy some professional paints. I mean, Schminker are fantastic paint. I've never used a better paint, but I've heard lots of good things. I mean, I was torn at the time with between Schminker and Sennelier. I really like the look of a Sennelier's paints as well, which have honey in them, which supposedly makes them so bright and vibrant. And they're also meant to be very good for the way I paint, which is like in glazes and layers. But there are alternatives to them. I've been recommending certain paints to friends who've asked, and not through experience, but by what I've seen here on YouTube, watching other artists. St. Petersburg White Nights are meant to be a fabulous paint for the price. I mean, you can buy like a 32 set full pan St. Peter's watercolours for about, I think it's around about the £50 mark here in the UK. But another one is the Gamzai Tambi Japanese watercolours. Now I've been interested in them because they're meant to behave slightly differently from traditional watercolour and almost be somewhere in between watercolour and gouache, in that they're slightly more opaque than transparent. And I find those really tempting, and they're a fabulous deal. I think you can get 48 full pans, and their full pans are about the size of 3 normal full-size pans. So they're huge pans, and 48 of them I think is around about the £60 mark. So another fabulous buy. Whereas your Schminker, I mean, I originally started off with a 24 full pan set, and I mean, I got those on special offer. They should be around about the £180 mark, but I got them for about 135, I think it was. And I've gradually added to them. I've bought a separate tin, and I now have two full tins. About, what have I got? 56 full pans on my palette now. You really don't need all those colours because you can mix most colours yourself, but I mean, for someone who's already a very slow painter, that's just going to slow me down even more if I'm having to mix every single colour out of just the primary colours, say. So it's nice to have them at hand and quick and easy, and that's another reason for the pans over the tubes. It's the speed of being able to just pick the colour you want, you see it on your pan, you wet it, bosh, you're painting, rather than squeezing tubes, finding tubes, undoing tubes, So yeah, that's why I prefer the pans. I'm going back in now with my sepia pit pen just to refine and redefine some edges and some little details here and there. I just find it easier to see where I need to thicken the lines when the paint is on there, because you'll get a certain, you create contrast with the underpainting and with the outline, but until you get the colours on there, you can't really, I can't really settle. My line work's never finished until the painting's finished. So you'll see I pick up that pen every now and again when I think something's getting lost, and I'll just bring it out slightly. I find my heat gun that I use absolutely invaluable. It really speeds up the painting time. I used to have a hair dryer that I used to use years ago, but the heat gun is so much better. You can dry very wet areas very quickly if you need to, and yeah, it's just very handy to have on the side of a desk. I really recommend one to anyone. I mean, if you're doing painting on cold press paper and you're working wet on wet, then no, I don't recommend one, because half of the appeal of that kind of painting style is just to let the paint and the water do what it wants to do, and by speeding up that drying process, you're actually you're lessening the chances of some wonderful effects happening, some happy accidents. So, but when you're painting on hot press paper like this, and in quite a controlled way, then yeah, some kind of heat gun or hair dryer is invaluable, because this painting would take even longer, I mean twice as long, if I had to keep leaving it to dry naturally. I decided that I wanted to add some little details to the border, so I thought, well, I'll add these little kind of golden heart shapes and little acorns in the corners as well. for no particular reason other than the fact I think it just adds something to it, a little charming detail. Just about happy with the picture now mostly, so I'm going over it now, adding some age to the paper. You can see there the mix of colours I have, which I kind of stain the paper with, and just to, it brings you, I feel like it brings some uniformity to the whole picture, having a wash like that. But then I like to flick some paint in the corners, and just to give it a sort of old grimy look as well, and it all gives it, I hope, that vintage feel. I'm adding some cool highlights in now with a light sky blue Prismacolor pencil crayon, because it's backlit by the moon. I wanted to have that kind of cool highlight from that moonlight sort of backlit around the picture, so you'll see it around the edge lighting on the fox and on his cape and on his accordion and things like that. I'll add the warmer highlights with white ink, but I'll mix that white ink with a little bit of yellow ochre just so it's not pure white, and I'll just add those highlights like I am now onto the nose and the eyes of everything. So we're coming to the end of the video now as I peel away the masking tape to reveal the final image. I'll just go around the outline of the painting because it's a little bit sort of rough on the edges, and I'll just thicken up that line around the outside of the outside of the picture with a Pitt pen. But yeah, no, that's just about done now. So I hope everybody likes it, and if you do like it, then as usual, leave a like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and please check out in the description below the link to my Etsy store. This print should be available on my store by that point. I've been trying to think how to do it, so yeah, I might offer this one in a slightly different format that's more fitting to it. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll be back with another picture very soon. Take care, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.